Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend D.G. Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is Luca Perich, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Recording has started. Hello and welcome once again, friends, to Super Connectivity. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is that blue-eyed bomber from the Burg of Pits.
Fill me and Perich.
Philip, welcome back to another exciting episode.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about the Eternals. And what I think is the most interesting question that I have about the Eternals at the start of the movie and at the end of the movie is that first scrawl in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this idea that is presented in it, which is that the universe was in balance. Though, part of me wonders, is it going out of balance because of the Celestials? Is that essentially what is happening? That the Celestials have put these planets out of balance? That because the Celestials are using this power beyond the Infinity Stones even, which is the thing, one can imagine that, the Celestials were not affected by the Infinity Stones. The Eternals were not. Most likely not even the Deviants were, because they are beings that are empowered by this cosmic energy that predates the stones, from what they tell us. That, these were beings that came to existence before the Big Bang. Which immediately gets me thinking about the comic books and the other being who has been conspicuously absent from the Marvel Universe lately, who also is a being from before the Big Bang. And that being Galen or Galactus. And, we know from Marvel Comics lore that how Galen became Galactus was in navigating the collapse of the former universe, the heat death of the former universe, through the singularity, and coming out the other side in what amounts to a cosmic egg. But here's the thing, he was not alone on his ship. And it immediately opens up this question: Are the Celestials essentially the rest of his crew? Now, it's interesting when we look at what has been established more recently in Marvel lore, which was that that essentially that Galactus was not supposed to be the world devourer. He was supposed to be the life bringer, but that his egg hatched too early. But by the time his egg hatched, obviously the Celestials had already been released as well. And it opens up this question: was Galactus supposed to be like the Celestials and a being creating universes and worlds and life? Or was he always meant to be the one that is destroying life? And as has been suggested in the comics, I believe it's Earth X goes into this, that Galactus's purpose was literally to eat worlds that had these celestial eggs in them. And, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder how this all came about. And then Here's another interesting question to ask yourself. Because if celestials are born of worlds that reach a certain amount of sentience, is it possible that the elders of the universe are the last survivors of the planetary eggs for the celestials? That the celestials say that they were the first, and maybe they were the first in the sense that they were the cosmic eggs, but that within their worlds they burst forth, and that the last survivors of these worlds are the elders of the universe. Your collector, your grand master, your champion, if we ever get to see him, or her.
I mean, unless the elders of the universe are like the survivors of some of these celestial planets, where it's like,
well, yeah,
if you don't die, you get imbued somehow with some celestial power.
I mean, that might be the idea. Is that at the end of it, when the planet, when the celestial is born, this last being, and I wonder if we're going to get that coming forward. It's interesting when we discuss the celestials, because clearly celestials do have a life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But we come into the story with their story that they are the first to exist. But immediately, if you say, well, if you were the first to exist, then why are there others? Why are more celestials being born? Why are these things coming into creation now? Why are you not eternal, mighty celestial?
I mean, unless it's just because they're born in different cycles. Because what was it like? The more conflict on a planet or something was feeding it or something. That's why they wanted the Eternals.
Well, yeah, it's the growth of sentient populations, and that the more conflict on a world, which is an interesting question because it has that. It's the Fermi paradox. You need sentient life to progress to a certain point to establish a bulkhead where a celestial can be born. But obviously, you run the risk that same conflict could wind up destroying that civilization before that that celestial can be born. So it's an interesting question when we apply it to the Fermi paradox. It's also interesting when you think about from the comics again how there were other Eternals that were created, and I wonder if we will see those kinds of things, because we do see that the Eternals were built on the World Forge in the movie, and that it is possible they created these Eternals to look like humans, but that they could just as easily create Skrull Eternals. They could just as easily create Kree Eternals. And those worlds, too, may have buried beneath the surface some sort of dreaming celestial. And, that could be what we get to eventually with this coming, with the coming of Galactus, is this idea of this being that is going to be trying to destroy these worlds so more celestials are not born, because eventually it will tip the balance of the universe if these celestials are born. It's interesting, and then it comes into this question about Thanos, and again, it is interesting, this idea of balance, and Thanos, of course, seeking to bring balance to the universe. And it is that quest for balance that literally prevented Tiamat from rising in the first place. And it suddenly creates this question: what is the balance that we are seeking? Is it balance? Because the Celestials feel they are the balance. But if you are this eternal Skrull, or not the eternal Skrull, but if you are this eternal Thanos, and maybe you, like Thena, is burdened with that greater memory, and you know what the goal is, but you also know that the universe is designed not to serve life, but to serve these celestial beings. That it's basically this idea that once all this life comes into abundance, it will trigger the creation of a celestial, and then the destruction of all life on that planet, and then the creation of more planets, and thereby more celestials in that exponential grid. So it is that question: was his intention to stop the birth of a celestial? Was he trying to bring the universe into balance expressly because the universe is out of balance, not because of the population, but because of what that population tips into being, which is a celestial?
I'm surprised the Celestials didn't have words with Thanos, because when he snapped, it's like not only did he slow down that one in the Earth, I'm sure there was a few others and other planets that he slowed down. Because I mean, he half the universe, so it's
Yeah. Well, and people have pointed out that technically he only set the clock back, that humans would have gotten back up to that population
Oh
set
yeah.
point within like 69 years, yeah, 69 years. But
Yeah, but I mean, even 5 minutes. You don't think the Celestials will be mad? It's like, oh, he's slowed down the birth of how many Celestials?
well, yeah, but the idea being that maybe, and it could have also been that they knew that it would be undone.
Mhm.
They knew that one way or another it would all be undone in time,
Mhm.
and so they weren't worried about it because they knew what would happen. They knew either the natural fecundity of humanity and other planets beings would repopulate their planets to that tipping point for the celestial, or they would simply, someone would find a way to just bring everyone back in a snap. Because as we say, they knew that the or at least Kang knew that what the Avengers did was what they were supposed to do. So it could be that it had the blessing of the Celestial. I'm also interested in how Eros is going to play out in this, in his relationship to Thanos, the brother of Thanos, which does suggest again that, and it's interesting because it does seem like Marvel is trying to have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Because when we first see Titan, it is the original origin idea of Thanos, which is that all the people, in fact, even Eros is purple in his first appearance. That all of them were purple, which then also opens up this question: maybe all of the Eternals were purple on Titan, but that after Titan's destruction, they all modified their bodies in various ways.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember the comic book explanation why Thanos was purple. Because in the comics, the ones on Titan weren't purple. They look like the
Well,
rest of the
actually, I guess, and I've seen images of this, like before they merged the beings of Titan with the Eternals,
Mhm.
they actually did have them all be purple. So in the first appearance of Thanos and Zuras, or not Zuras, but Mentor and Eros, they actually were all purple people. I've watched a lot of these videos, and apparently that is what they were designed to be in those first comics, because they weren't Eternals yet. They only became the Eternals after they started to integrate the Eternals into the larger Marvel comic book universe.
I just looked it up real quick. This is right. It did remind me. While he is the son of two Eternals, he does carry the deviant gene in his
Yes.
genetics. So that's why.
Well, yeah, and of course that's a whole other thing with how these deviants were, because of course these deviants were possibly the most interesting. These might be the most interesting villains we've ever had in the Marvel Universe. Again, because they are just fighting for survival and are literally just fighting against fighting against these Eternals, knowing full well what their purpose is. That their and literally they need to kill the Eternals because they know the Eternals will kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But we also see this idea that the deviants can evolve, and that was the thing. That was the thing that the Celestials didn't take into account. That because the deviants were constantly changing, they would evolve and eventually become, so that they had them evolve so they could be that apex predator. But at the same time, when they made the Eternals quote unquote perfect. So they put them already at what we will call an evolutionary peak that prevents them from changing and adapting and growing. But as we see and we learn that actually life always finds a way, because the Eternals did in fact change and grow and alter their own programming. So it's interesting, Philip. There's a lot of things to unpack in that, and I'm really looking forward to how they do that in the upcoming MCU, because we are going to be getting a lot of this stuff revisited again, I imagine, in Thor: Love and Thunder, where there is supposed to be a character that they're calling Zeus, but maybe will be Zuras. We're going to have to see how that plays out. We're going to get possibly in Guardians 3 more. We're going to get Adam Warlock, but maybe we're going to get some interplay with Pip and Eros as well when we do get Adam Warlock. So there's a lot of possibilities of where they're going to take this, and I think that, and this is why I think Eternals is going to be, it might be one of these things like Thor: The Dark World, where it was far more important to the story than we thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you want to talk some comics, Phil?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of, if you don't mind jumping there, I got Eternal 7.
Hey, how's Eternal 7? Is it Eternal?
Yeah, well, remember we're speaking of that World Forge. Previously the Eternals discovered that when one of them is reincarnated, brought back to life in that machine, it kills a human somewhere.
Ooh,
so yes,
that's less fun.
So while they're dealing with that, I guess a bunch of the other Eternals are creating a Unimind, and I guess it's basically just supposed to be just ceremonial, where it's like, oh yeah, Zuras is going to be named Prime Eternal again, but no, he has a contender this time. Thanos.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, maybe prison has reformed him.
Maybe death has reformed him.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe he's like Solomon Grundy. He comes back a little bit different every time.
Yeah, because, at the end of this, he seems to beat Zuras, so I don't know if Thanos is going to be in charge for a while here.
Why not? Why not? How is he going to run the Eternals any worse than Zuras already has?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I said, but this is just my basic takeaway. Is like, it could be interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It could be interesting. One book I did read this week is Winter Guard #3.
Ooh.
Where, speaking of Thanos, the former big bag of the MCU, we get a great storyline with the future big bad of the MCU, none other than King Vlad Dracula, King of the Vampires, from the vampire state of Chernobyl. Which I find fascinating, just the idea that Chernobyl, as radioactive it is, that just background radiation doesn't hurt vampires.
No.
But somehow solar radiation does.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I guess that's like why the moon doesn't hurt them. Because, even though it is just sunlight, has to be just a specific kind of cosmic rays to burn them. But for those who don't know, essentially what we have is there is a Project Snowblind that is 4 data drives that are encrypted that can only be unencrypted when they are all brought together. And Vlad Dracul has one. Of course, we have, and I do love Chernobog in this. Chernobog and Perun are probably my favorite members of the Winter Guard, just because they are actual gods and are way above these mortals. Although, man, the mystery of who the Red Widow is, it deepens because, like I said, man, every time I keep on thinking they're going to reveal that she's got some kind of weird, dark, mystical background, and part of me just has to think it's going to be Clairvoyant from the 12, the first Black Widow from the 1940s, who was actually a spirit of vengeance that was tasked by the devil to just kill souls. So, but we do finally find out what is on the Snowblind drives, and it is basically all of the unapproved history of various corporations, Hydra offshoots, the Soviet Union, etc., and how they've been secretly manipulating and controlling the world all along, at least at the time of that recording. And basically, Red Guardian wants to release this to the world because he feels that everything needs to be burnt down in order to save Russia. If the world burns, the Russians will rebuild the world and will rebuild Mother Russia to a greater glory. And this freaks B'Elanna out because she's like, that is not what I signed up for. Especially when Dracul basically gives him the final drive, which actually Alexei had given to him before, because he knew the only way to keep it safe was to give it to, like, as he was hiding all of these things, he gave one to Vlad Dracul, knowing that he would be the only person that could keep it safe and would only release it when it would be advantageous to himself, which, I guess doesn't make a lot of sense, but it made sense to him at the time. It works if you allow it to. And basically, Vlad Dracul is like, yeah, man, I'd love to see the world burn. Humans will be so much easier to eat then. And when the Winter Guard try to stop Alexei, of course, all the vampires say, no, that is my honored guest. Do not chase after my honored guest, and essentially Red Guardian escapes. Yelena is captured because he cuts her loose because he realizes that, he's done with her. And that's where we end it. Yelena captured, Red Guardian out with the drives, about to blow up the world. Bum, bum, bum. And I think our last book is Savage Avengers.
Yeah, 26. Man, I love how Lil said Hellion 17 was bloody, gory, man. Man.
Oh, well, this is a Conan book,
Oh, yeah.
You can't judge a Conan book by the same qualities you judge another book. And man, Sumerian Afterlife is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
He dies his final breath. Crom does not care, and he wanders into the forever forest to wander forever, never seeing another being. Which is like, I don't know if that sounds like, I know people are like, really? Awesome! Because as they say, heck is other people. We got good old Kang on the Rosebud 2.
Yep.
Good old throwback. And he's gathering the army. And when Kalingath does show up, Conan has bought them just enough time to have another version of Conan come through and step on him with a dinosaur.
Oh yeah, they're battling in the Savage Land.
Yeah, well, that's the best place to battle,
Oh yeah.
And you just get everyone. And it is your basic Thanos kind of fight, where you just got everyone running at him from all sides. You've got, got the whole Crimson Bands of Ceterac move.
I mean, it appears like Doom rips his jaw off.
Yeah, but then he's like, "Oh, Doom, you were never that good of a sorcerer or a scientist."
Oh yeah, I think that what is the quote? It's like he's like, "You're not even the best sorcerer or scientist here."
Yeah, well, I mean, truth hurts, man. Truth hurts. And as we know, Doom is a petty dabbler. He has never been able to commit to one thing. And that is the risk of being an autodidact, is you become really good at a lot of things, but you can't become the master of exactly what you need to be. And we got all the other guys coming back, including hey, it's the Juggernaut. Yeah, it's Juggernauting time. And it's fun and it's delightful. But of course, Colin Gath isn't even in his final form yet. They do stab him with the magic knife that was supposed to kill him.
Mm-hmm. And some adamantium claws.
Yeah. But it is sort of like, what? That was your big plan? You stabbed me with the Shimagurath knife? So I get the feeling there's going to be something that's going to be at the back end of this where it's like, yeah, you thought we were trying to do this, but we were really doing this other thing. I think Shimagurath is going to pop out of his chest in the final issue. Maybe. That's my prediction. Mark my words. That no, we just needed to infect you with one little piece of Shimagurath, and Shimagurath, who is the Elder God, will grow within you and will devour you instead. So that's my big prediction for Savage Avengers. We'll see if I'm correct in 30 days, true believers. Oh. Anything else you want to talk about this week, Phil?
I don't think. Just like I forget if the next issue is the last issue, but yeah, I know Savage Avengers is coming to an end soon here. So if not, it might be till January or February. But yeah, I'm pretty sure within the next couple issues, it's the last year ending it.
Well, I think, and they're ending the Conan line, which is like, I'm so confused by that because they invested so much into this, and now they're just letting it go again. And it's like, what are you doing to me with Conan? Why are you teasing me, Marvel?
Or, I mean, unless they're stopping to because of something big. Or you think Disney would use Conan in any capacity?
Well, I mean, because apparently it's not public domain like I thought. I thought it just got into public domain. But apparently, and it's one of these things like Red Sonja, where it's like, well, technically, technically the books are now in public domain. Certain versions of the characters aren't in public domain. So, and the versions that aren't in public domain are certain stylistic things that belong to the Conan Properties LLC,
Okay.
That derive from the movies, that were inspired by the comic books, that still somehow Marvel didn't wind up owning. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense, but somehow that's what's happened. So we're gonna have to see what happens next. I'm unsure, but I'm still excited by it. We're gonna, something's gonna be interesting. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. You would think they would bring him in just to have another Thor kit, not quite similar to Thor, but more unaware of current society and.
Yeah, well, I think that the basic problem with Conan is, on one level, he is, he can exist in the Conan universe.
Yeah.
But it's very hard when you bring him into the larger Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Because you either have to bring him in and then have him interact with the humans of the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
And the heroes of the Marvel universe, or you've got to leave him in his past, and then you just have a hard time integrating things because, you have, it's like, okay, so do you have a Skrull invasion of ancient Lemuria? How do you break this up? How do you integrate it into the larger Marvel mythos? So that's always the problem with Conan. So, or like I said, or you bring him to modern day Conan, which I do love. I love my Conan trapped in the modern day.
It'd be interesting. Drop Conan in Asgard. See how he interacts with Thor and his friends.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'd get along, Although honestly, I'm sure Thor would get bothered by, how prissy all the Asgardians are.
Mm-hmm.
He barely tolerates that fancy boy Wolverine. So he just likes him because he's got the knife hands. It's like, I want knife hands.
And he gave him the Hellfire Club.
Yeah, and that's what I will always love about Conan, just that he just does not know when to back down in a fight. He's just like, nope, come at me, bro. Come at me. All right, Philip. If people liked what we talked about this week, if they liked this shorter format, how can they find us and tell us what to do? Or do they say, no, we need you to go at least for another hour every night? How can they let us know their thoughts on that, Phil?
You can always get a hold of us, anyone on the team, capesandlunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And I mean, you can always reach out to Super Connectivity on Facebook, on Twitter. You can find links to all the social medias for all the shows. There's the YouTube channel. Every episode of every show we do is on the YouTube channel. If you do want to show your appreciation for the fine quality programming, support us on Patreon, please. Once again, we're on our own now. Everyone's paying out of their own pocket. So yes, if you can, please contribute to the Patreon. Shout out to our patrons right now, Ray and Justin. And we also have merch, but you can find everything I just mentioned all at Linktree, linktr.ee/capesandlunatics.
Alrighty, and of course you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way where Maz and Paws once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on the Twitter as I live tweet things like Stargirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and whatever live TV Marvel ever creates again, which they may never do, at Charlie Esser. That's CHARLIE. Yes, SCR. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing!
Thank you, Maz. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been another episode of Super Connectivity. I certainly hope you've enjoyed connecting with us, and I certainly hope you come back and super connect with us again. Good night.
Good night.
So I do like the shorter format because I think that 30 minutes is the perfect time for a podcast. A little over, but
Sometimes we just have a lot of comics or a lot of news to get to.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I think some of our new formats in the new year.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Gonna make for that nice, tight, in and out, nobody gets hurt kind of a podcast.
Stay tuned, kids. In January, the new Super Connectivity.
What will we connect to next?